Another thing nowadays is that there's a lot of stress on meditation. In fact, sometimes over stress on meditation. So much so that sometimes some meditation teachers tell their students not to study the suttas, not to study any books, only meditate. This is not according to the Buddha's teachings. Firstly, why do we want to meditate? Because we want to get out of samsara, isn't it? So if we want to get out of samsara, the Buddha said that we have to practice the Noble Eightfold Path. Okay? The Noble Eightfold Path can be said to consist of 3 sections. Sila, Samadhi, Panya. In Mandarin they say Jie Ting Hui, Kai Ting Chi Wai. Yes or not? So in the suttas, the Buddha says that these 3 things are 3 trainings. The first one is a training in the Adi Sila, the higher moral conduct. Training in the higher moral conduct. The second one is a training in the Adi Citta. Adi Citta is the higher mind. And the higher mind, developing the mind so that it becomes an elevated mind, a developed mind. That's why sometimes meditation is also called bhavana. Bhavana means development. That means developing your mind so that it goes above an ordinary mind. The third training is called the training in the adipanya, the higher wisdom. Now, the adi sila, the higher morality or higher moral conduct, has 2 parts. One is the negative part, one is the positive part. The negative part of doing good and the positive part of doing good. The negative part of doing good means not to harm others. And that means keeping your precepts. When we keep our precepts, we restrain ourselves from harming others. In fact, the 5 basic precepts are to restrain us from harming others. Not to kill, not to steal, not to commit adultery, not to lie. The last one, not to drink or take intoxicants, which basically harm ourselves. So, the positive part of the adisila, of doing good, is dana, charity, charity or generosity, or making offerings. So, this is the most basic practice, especially for lay people. Why? Because the Buddha said, if a person does not practice sila and dana, precepts and charity, that person won't be able to be reborn as a human being or in heaven. A person who does not practice precepts and charity will be reborn in the woeful plains. That's why the very basic practice is precepts and charity. The Buddha said, if you keep a low degree of sila, precepts and charity, then you will be reborn with a human body, but you won't have much luck. You'll be born in a poor family, you find it hard to make a living and all that. If you have a medium degree of precepts, of keeping the precepts and charity, then you'll be reborn as a human being, but with much luck, with much blessings. You'll be born to a rich family, good family, easily can make a good living, etc. And then if you keep a high degree of precepts and charity, the Buddha said you'll be reborn as a heavenly being, where you will enjoy life for a long time. So this is the Adi Sila, training in the higher moral conduct. And then the second part, the training in the Adicitta, the higher mind, is actually in the suttas mentioned to be the 4 jhanas, the 4 states of meditative absorption. Why the 4 jhanas? Because according to the suttas, when we attain jhana, meditative absorption, the mind becomes so still, so much under control, that the 5 hindrances drop away. The 5 hindrances are what block us from seeing clearly. The 5 hindrances are what block us from having wisdom. And these 5 hindrances are sensual desire, ill will or anger, sloth and torpor. In Chinese they say fan chen. And then the 4th one is restlessness and worry. And then the 5th one is doubt. So these 5 things block us from seeing clearly, just like dark glasses. If you wear dark glasses, you try to see a certain color. You may swear that it's a certain color, but when you take away your specs and dark glasses, you see that it's different. That is the Adi Chitta. Then the Adi Panya is the higher wisdom. And the 2 factors of the Noble Eightfold Path to do with the wisdom is right view and right thoughts. Right view and right thoughts. That means you must have right view and right thoughts. In fact, in the Suttas, Majjhima Nikaya, Sutta 117, it is mentioned that to practice the Noble Eightfold Path, you must first get right view. If you haven't gotten right view, you have not entered the Noble Eightfold Path. So the first factor to get is right view. And we read from the suttas that actually if a person has right view, that means he is an Arya already. He's already an Arya. So that means even the lower stage of Aryahood, namely the first path, the first path attainer also has right view. So it is very important to get right view. So how do you get right view? Now in the suttas, Majjhima Nikaya, I think 43, it is said that there are 2 conditions for getting right view. And what are these 2 conditions? The first one is listening to the Dhamma, listening to the original Dhamma, the discourses of the Buddha, the teachings of the Buddha. And the second factor is having yoniso manasikara. So this word yoniso manasikara is very important. What is yoniso manasikara? Yoni means the womb where something is born, the source of something. And manasikara means work of mind. Kara means work. Mana is the mind. So work of mind, that means consideration or contemplation or attention. So yoniso manasikara means thorough consideration. That means contemplation or consideration that goes back to the source of the problem. That means if you have yoniso manasikara, that means you have a very clear mind. A mind that doesn't have much hindrances. That means a person with not much hindrances is a person who is quite intelligent, who has a high IQ and all that. And he's not blocked by heavy karma, obstructive karma. So such a person, when he hears the Dhamma, he is able to see clearly the Dhamma. And that's why you find in the suttas and the Vinaya that many people who came to listen to the Buddha give a graduated discourse. The Buddha usually gave a graduated discourse to newcomers. And this graduated discourse is said to consist of 9 things. The first one is dana, giving or charity. The second point is sila, moral conduct. The third one is a result of these 2 things, going to heaven. The fourth one is the folly, the vanity of sensual pleasures. How sensual pleasures are useless in the sense that they never satisfy, make us more hungry for it. And then the fifth one, renunciation, when we understand that there's nothing in the world that can really satisfy us, make us content, and then we renounce. And then after that, followed by the 4 noble truths. And normally, after the Buddha has given this graduated discourse on these 9 things, that person is said to have attained the Dhamma vision. Dhammachakku, or vision of the Dhamma. That means that person has attained the first path. And before that person dies, he will automatically get the first fruition. So that is how a person gets right view by having yoniso manasikara and listening to the true Dhamma of the Buddha. So from here you see that actually the most important thing for us, if we want to practice the Noble Eightfold Path, is to listen to the original teachings of the Buddha. That is why the Buddha called his disciples savakas. Savakas are listeners or hearers. I think in Chinese they translate it as shengwen, isn't it? Shengwen, savakas. So the Buddha's disciples are called listeners or hearers because they listen to his word. If we don't listen to the word of the Buddha, the original teachings of the Buddha, however much effort we put into the spiritual path, it is not much use. During the Buddha's time, or even outside the Buddha's time, there were ascetics who practiced very hard. And some of them even attained spiritual powers, psychic powers. And yet, they could not become enlightened. They could not even get the first path, the lowest path, Aryan path also they could not get because they had not listened to the right teachings of the Buddha. So we are very fortunate. We live in you can say, the Buddha era. We are still in the era of the Buddha because we are able to listen to the original teachings of the Buddha. Unfortunately, the original teachings are mixed with a lot of other teachings. And so most people find it very difficult to separate the true Dhamma from the false Dhamma. In the Anguttara Nikaya, the Buddha said, if a person says, what is our Dhamma? Our Dhamma is what is contrary to the Dhamma. If a person says what is our Dhamma is Dhamma, then he creates much demerit for himself. And then he harms a lot of humans and devas. And he causes the disappearance of the true Dhamma. But if a person says what is our Dhamma is our Dhamma, that means he dares to criticize what is not Dhamma as not Dhamma, then he creates much merit for himself. And then he benefits a lot of humans and devas. And he preserves the true Dhamma. So because of that, it is the duty of monks who know to speak out what is not Dhamma, to criticize that as not Dhamma, and to establish the true Dhamma.